Welcome everyone to the Phoenix Report. I am Jack Connor, and today is a very different kind of episode that we've done. I've never really done one of these on this podcast, and I've wanted to for a long time. And I figured because I've been doing one-on-one interviews, the typical format of the show, and I also do movie reviews, and I've done like wrestling shows in the past and whatnot. I figure why not do album reviews? It makes sense being a guy in a rock band for years and being a big music fan. It's something else that I'm really passionate about. So I figured this was just the natural extension of different kind of content I could put out for this show. And I had gotten the idea from talking to my guest today, who's the bass player from my band, Vertebreaker, my buddy Robert Secrest. Rob is here.
Hey, hey.
Yeah. Yeah, and this was more or less your idea as far as like, because you would approach me like a couple weeks ago, be like, hey man, why don't we do our own thing where you pick a couple albums, I'll pick a couple albums, and then we'll go through them, we'll talk about them, and I was like, yeah, that's a great idea, and again, we might spin this off into its own series. For now, it's kind of part of the Phoenix Report, part of my podcast, and who knows? I might even change the name of my podcast to something else. Phoenix Report. That sounds like really formal. I don't know. I've been using it for a long time, and I just got into habit with it. But I digress. But we had talked about that and how we wanted to start, and you had listed a couple different albums you wanted to work on, and I listed a couple, and we had decided to start with one of mine, or at least one of my picks, I should say, is the album Something Like Human from the band Fuel. This album came out on September 19th, 2000. And this was an album that I picked out, again, not necessarily I think when you talk about classic albums, necessarily like Back in Black or Van Halen 1 or something, this isn't necessarily something that's that big as far as like being recognized as an all-time classic. But I picked it because it was an album that I really enjoyed, and it came out when I was a sophomore in high school, and I remember just wearing that CD out, and it was a really good album, and Fuel was a really good band. They still are, and so what I guess what were some of your thoughts when I suggested that we do this one?
I was actually kind of interested. The main reason I wanted to do this was I wanted to kind of review and look back at albums that they were popular, but they weren't huge albums, and maybe stuff that people really didn't listen to thoroughly. Growing up, we used to listen to whole CDs and albums, and it wasn't really go on the internet, pull up one song, on YouTube or Spotify or something else.
Yeah.
And, I remember when this album came out in 2000, I would have been September, I would have just graduated high school. So, they were still a really big band. I was a big Sunburn guy. When that album came out, I wore that one out. That was probably, my junior year of high school. I had just really started getting into playing music. We went to see Fuel. The funny story is we went to see Fuel at the House of Blues at Downtown Disney. And to get tickets back then, you had to go to the mall. So there was a store called the Disc Jockey, and that's where you bought tapes and CDs and everything.
And they had a Ticketmaster outlet there,
yeah, they had Ticketmaster. So we weren't savvy enough to get it any other way. So we go up to the door, and the opening band was Virgo's Merlot for that specific show. And we were like, hey, we need Virgo's Merlot tickets for whatever the date was. And the lady's like, I don't see those tickets. And we were super confused about it. Turns out they were the opening band. They weren't even on the ticket. It was Fuel and Buck Cherry. So we figured that out. And we were like, well, we like Fuel. Fuel's awesome. So anyway, I had never listened to this whole album. I've heard Hemmorage, and that was it. So I was very excited, and we'll get into it, but top to bottom, this is actually an album that people should listen to. It's very much a time capsule of the era, the sound, and it even kind of has in a lot of ways it does feel like even maybe early 90s album in some
Mm-hmm.
ways. The production's super high level, but some of the vibe and stuff sometimes harkens back to that era. So
Yeah, yeah. Fuel was a band, and when this came out in 2000, they were very much a band on the rise at this point. They had put out their first album 2 years earlier, Sunburn, in '98. They had a big hit with Shimmer, and then I think with Jesus or a Gun. They're let's see, the band originally started as far back as '89 in 1989 in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which I mean I grew up in outside of Philadelphia, so like they definitely had like some a regional following in that way. But by the time I was in high school, I was already in St. Petersburg, Florida. I'd still heard of them through through other friends of mine who were up north. But yeah, I mean I was always certainly aware of them. I liked Shimmer, and I thought Hemmorage was a great song, and we'll definitely get into that. I mean that's just I think that's just such an underrated song. I feel like Hemmorage is fantastic. And but yeah, I mean, but they had gotten started. They'd gotten started in tennis. Well, I should say it was founded by Carl Bell and Jeff Abercrombie, the guitar player and bass player. They were from Tennessee, and I think they had moved to Harrisburg, and they had like kind of played in the bars, and that. No, I'm sorry. They had met Brett Scallions, their lead singer, and their longtime drummer Jody Abbott. I guess they had met all those guys in Tennessee, but then they relocated to Harrisburg, to Pennsylvania, and that's sort of where they kind of cut their teeth, and I guess that eventually that's where they got signed. Um, I kind of feel bad for Jody Abbott, who was their original drummer for all those years. I guess he was kind of like the Pete Best of the band, where it's like they had gotten signed, and I don't know what happened. Either he left or got fired or whatever, but he didn't end up playing on that first record. They brought in a session guy named Jonathan Mover, and then eventually they settled on drummer Kevin Miller, who I think went on the road with them and played on this record as well. So, but yeah, like they definitely had some steam in the late '90s and at the turn of the millennium. They had Walk the Sky which was one of the bonus tracks on this CD, was also a bonus track from the sessions from their first album, and that was on the soundtrack of the movie Godzilla, the 1998 Godzilla with Matthew Broderick. Great soundtrack, by the way.
great soundtrack. Okay, movie.
Yeah, I mean, I've never even seen the movie. I heard it wasn't
Yeah.
very good, but
No, it's super interesting. I didn't know that. So basically you have a band and they play for 10 years almost before they really break out. Because when you
yeah,
Wikipedia Fuel, Sunburn is 1998. That's their first album. But they, I didn't know that they had been kind of, forming new people coming in and out, right? When exactly did they get the lead singer that everyone knew? I forget.
yeah. I don't think I think they might have had a guy before Brett Scallions. Let me see here.
So yeah, they were basically kind of like a local / regional band for years, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
they were a club band just working the circuit. Let's see. Yeah, Brett Scallions.
really,
According to Wikipedia, he joined them in 1994. I don't know who their. It doesn't say anything about who the singer might have been before that.
yeah, this is definitely an example that, you know, musicians and even fans kind of need to
Well, I mean,
understand.
well, I think it's because again, the Wikipedia credits them as getting together in '89, but they weren't even called Fuel back then. It was
Yeah.
mainly like Carl and Jeff going through several different bands before they met. Um, before they met, I guess they met Brett in like late '93, '94.
So, let's just say Brett Scallion joins the band for 4 or 5 years. They play together, before their first label album is released.
Yeah.
That's there's no overnight success. People don't like the first time I heard Fuel would have been on the radio,
Hmm.
and it probably was Shimmer. I don't remember their first single from that, but when I got the album, it was totally amazing from the top. So
It's crazy because it's crazy how many bands from like Pennsylvania, of all places, ended up making. I guess because that's the thing. Like, if you're close enough to like Philly or like that, if you're close enough to that eastern seaboard, then like, it's not that far to go to New York or to Boston or to DC
Yeah.
or Baltimore or a lot of these big major cities that are kind of clustered together. So maybe that's a part of it. Like
Yeah.
Breaking Benjamin, I think, is from Scranton.
Right. Yeah. And from Harrisburg, you can get to,
Hailstorm is
oh,
from Allentown, which is like 2 hours away from where I grew up.
yeah, you can get to Ohio quickly, New York, even down into like Metro DC. So
Gotcha.
you're kind of close to a lot of places.
Maybe I should have never moved to Florida. No, but it's all good. But yeah, so I mean, but like this album, I remember I don't know who it was or how I don't specifically remember when it was that I bought it. I think just friends of mine would tell me about it, and I really loved Hemmorage. That was all over the radio when it came out. So I remember just buying the CD and I just thought front to back, this is just a real like listenable album. It just everything flows together. The production is great on it. It's produced by a guy named Ben Gross as well as Carl Bell. Carl was the guitar player. He wrote a majority of the songs. I think there were only like 2 songs on here where Brett Scallions had a co-write. So Carl was really he was really like the main guy behind the band.
Yeah. And when I noticed, so I wasn't familiar with Ben Gross. So a list of some of the bands he's produced, and this isn't even all of them, is Dream Theater,
Oh,
Marilyn
wow.
Manson, Seven Dust, Disturbed, Breaking Benjamin. He even has producing credit for Depeche Mode. I didn't deep dive that. I'm assuming that might have been probably a 1990s era
Yeah.
release.
He's worked with Alter Bridge as well, one of my favorite bands.
Yeah, and it's
Manson, Seven Dust,
yeah, production value of this album is top notch. You can't get any higher production value. And I did so during the Wikipedia search, I noticed I'm not going to credit the critic because sometimes critics are critical and sometimes they say nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave it a B, and the reason they didn't like it was because of the production value was too clean, or I think that people get critical about maybe
Yeah. People get weird about a lot of different stuff, and certainly like Sunburn was definitely a more like raw record because it was their first album, so it definitely had a little bit more of that raw energy to it. So I don't think this wasn't as heavy of a record as Sunburn was, but like it was definitely them taking the next step in their career. And and it's funny we mentioned bands like Seven Dust and Disturbed, like during that turn of the millennium, there was this like rise of all these bands that I mean I know I really love, and I think it was after the grunge thing had kind of came and went. Bands were still trying to find like the next thing, and yeah, you had like the rap rock and nu metal bands that came out, but there were still, which were really popular around that time. But like I really liked this kind of stuff. I mean, they classified it as post grunge or alternative rock. You had bits of sort of like the grunge sensibility, but also like just classic songwriting. Like they kind of had their feet in sort of like a pop sensibility to it. So I think a lot of critics kind of turned up their noses at it. Maybe because they were looking for something that was more unique and groundbreaking at that point, which I don't think. Like I don't think bands like these were necessarily groundbreaking, but I think they consistently wrote good songs. And for me, as a kid at this point, like that was enough. And honestly, as a music fan, I think that's still enough to me. Not everything has to be like mind blowing or incredibly new. I thought Fuel definitely kind of had their own thing for a little bit. I didn't feel like they were necessarily trying to copy anyone else.
No.
Maybe had they come out a few years earlier than they did, they would have been as big as, say, Bush, for example.
Well, that's exactly what my point was going to be, that I think that they're a victim of maybe coming in a little too late in the early 90s, mid 90s grunge era alternative scene, because they fit very well into that scene.
Mm-hmm.
They're, because so the track which one is it? Because I don't remember all the names, but Scar, which is that's a fourth track. It very much feels like an Alice in Chains style, like
Yeah.
it would have fit in super well in 1995.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2000, it's still a great song. It's amazingly written. The players are all great players. It's produced excellently, but it's just it gets lost in the shuffle. I think Hemmorage, which is, you love that song at the time because that's probably, I thought it was a good song, but see, I like it now more than I did back then. Because back then it was like, oh man, it's a great song, but it's kind of soft, like I want heavy stuff because that was when heavy music was kind of gaining a lot of popularity. I mean, you had bands like Slipknot. I think Mudvayne was coming up soon, and
Seven Dust, Disturbed was like right around the corner.
Yeah, Seven Dust and Disturbed. All these bands that were mainstream were also super heavy,
Yeah.
right? But I think that a band like Fuel kind of got pushed to the back because of the style was maybe to the populace was a little stale compared. They were like, you know what, we've heard this before. They didn't really get into the nuance.
Yeah, I mean,
appreciating it.
It's really tough in that business, especially because things do get competitive. And not that I think music in itself should be a competition, but, the reality is, I mean, it's, when there's a lot of talent out there and it's very tough to stand out. And it's very tough, and especially in the business, if you're lucky enough to get the promoters and radio behind you, then if you're lucky to maintain that momentum for a while, it's a very hard thing to do. I mean, a lot of times I'll think like, man, I feel like Fuel should have been bigger than they were, but the album they put after this, Natural Selection, it did pretty good, but I know they had some legal problems. Brett supposedly had like some health issues at the time, and but I mean, like that album was nominated for a Grammy for Best Engineered Album, and they had some hits with that one. I don't think they quite had the success on that album that they did with this one, Natural Selection, I mean. But like they did that, and then it wasn't until like 2004 where Kevin, the drummer, he left the band. And then in 2006, they announced that Brett, the singer, had left. And so, I mean, the Fuel carried on. They did another album with a singer named Torin Green called Angels and Devils. And I think they had Tommy Lee play a few songs on drums in the album. And they eventually got Tommy Stewart, who's the original drummer for Godsmack, to take over. So that lineup went for a little while, and then sort of around 2009, 2010 is when like they had a complete shift of lineup. I guess I don't know if Brett worked out a deal with Carl or what it was, but Brett ended up taking over the band, and I guess when Carl and Jeff decided they didn't want to go on the road anymore, so I guess Brett somehow got the rights to use the name Fuel, and he kind of kept going with different members. They recorded an album called Puppet Strings. They actually had a really good song on that album called Soul to Preach To, and that was a pretty decent album in itself. I mean, it was all different guys, so they were really experimenting with some different sounds on it. But again, by that time, I think Fuel, they kind of lost the momentum, lost popularity, and and just who knows? Had they stayed together, would things have been different? I don't know. It's like you said, it's very tough to keep momentum once people kind of know you for one thing, and even if you're lucky enough to have a big hit like Hemmorage, it's tough to maintain that success over a long time. And I think just that there were so many other bands out there. I guess the competition was really stiff. So yeah, I don't know, but apparently I just read that like I think it was in October of last year that Brett is no longer a part of Fuel, and that Carl is back in. I'm assuming Carl must have had like a piece of the ownership even when Brett was was performing as Fuel. They must have worked out some kind of deal. I don't know what it was.
That makes sense.
I'm sure Carl owned the name or whatnot. So but Carl is back in. Kevin Miller, the drummer on this album, is back in as well. They haven't announced who the new singer will be. I don't know if Jeff Abercrombie, their bass player, I don't know if he's back with it too. So I don't know for sure. But apparently Fuel is still together, and I guess they're planning on doing stuff. It won't be with Brett anymore, unfortunately. But it should be interesting to see what they do. I mean, it's tough because they're about 20, almost 30 years in at this point. But yeah, I mean, as a Fuel fan, I'm glad to see that they're still doing stuff. I would totally go see them if they came through.
Oh, absolutely. I think so. I was thinking that a song like Hemmorage is a blessing and a curse for this album.
Mm-hmm.
It's the main single. It's the song that everyone remembers.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great song. In a lot of ways it feels completely different than the rest of the album. You have basically 2 ballads, maybe 3. You have about 3 ballads possibly, but Hemmorage.
Bad Day was a big hit as well.
It was a bad. Oh, okay. Well, I don't remember that one, but that was a good.
It wasn't as big as Hemmorage, but it was another single they put out. It had a little bit of success there.
That's good. Okay, so you have 2 ballads that are the popular tracks that are well known, but then you have like the opening track Last Time is secretly heavy.
Mm-hmm.
It is like it's right in your face right away. And if you were familiar with the live performances of Fuel, they were a hard rocking band. They played, full distortion, lead solos, killer drums, loud, everything bass. The bass tone in this record is really, really good.
Yeah.
The song Easy it's like,
oh yeah, Jeff,
it's almost
bass player,
doesn't
he's
fit.
going off throughout all of it.
Yeah. It's a really cool like rhythm and melody, and then it makes sense that Carl Bell, who's the lead guitarist, and he's part of the producing, and he's the main songwriter. He's adding a lot of lead harmony with during the choruses, and I think they're kind of they're in the mix so well that they're kind of low, but they're still in front, and they're harmonizing with instead of having 2 vocal harmonies on like the hooks, he's adding in guitars. Everything is well written.
Yeah.
Hemmorage is it's still a song that's played on the radio today. It has stood the test of time. You will hear it. I mean, I will hear it on rock stations.
It's definitely one of my favorite songs. I think it's just such a well crafted, rock ballad. I don't even know if it's a ballad. It's more of a mid tempo. But yeah, I guess you could call it a ballad. But yeah, it's a really great song. The production on it is great, and I mean, anytime I've done like acoustic cover gigs, I'll usually do Hemmorage just because it's a good song. People know it, and it's really fun to play and sing. Brett, it's a shame that I guess he and Carl, for whatever reason, they haven't been able to work out whatever their differences are. Because I've seen him play before. I think he's a really talented frontman. I feel like, he has one of those voices where, I mean, look, you're either going to love it or hate it just because it's very distinct. And that's just the nature of a lot of vocalists. But I thought he fit in perfectly for what they were doing. I thought he was a really, really charismatic guy. And I thought, he performed really well on this album. I know early on, like in like early 2000s, he had done that special with that like the members of the Doors had done on VH1. I remember they brought in Scott Stapp to sing like a few Doors songs. He had worked with some of the members of the Doors as well. In fact, he was part of a project with Robbie Krieger and Ray Manzarek called Riders on the Storm. So like that version of the Doors had toured for a little bit, and Brett was the singer for that. So he's a guy like he definitely had some of that star power. I think the only thing that Fuel was missing, that if I were them, that I would have done different, I would have added a second guitar player in there, like someone who was like a really like flashy lead player. Not that Carl Bell wasn't a good guitar player. I thought he had some good solos here and there, but like he was definitely more of like the songwriter overall. I felt like if they had like someone who was like a real like Sinister Gates like guitar hero kind of guy, I feel like that might have put Fuel over the top, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a pretty good. See, it's been so long, I didn't remember when they were live if they had two guitar players. So if they only have one, it makes sense because that is tough to pull off live, especially when you have multiple tracks on
Hmm.
albums, and when you see them live, you're like, wow, it feels a little different.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, I know Brett would play guitar as well. Like he'd play some rhythm guitar.
yeah, that's kind of like the hold the guitar maybe, and it's a little quiet, possibly.
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe, but I mean, I mean, and again, not that Carl Bell's solos are bad necessarily. There's
Yeah,
nothing wrong with them. I don't know if they were like really distinct enough to like stand out. If they got someone in there who was just a badass and could like shred in the middle of it,
absolutely.
that would have. I felt like that would have put them over the top.
So I had a couple questions that I wanted to every time we do one of these,
Hmm.
and then if you have any that you want to make like standard, go ahead and do them. So I'll start with a hard one. It's not meant to be um, negative or
Yeah.
anything, but if there was one album or one song on this album that you would delete, let's say you're in the band and you're like, you know what, let's just not put this one out for whatever reason.
Mm,
Basically, it's a nice way of saying what's your least favorite song or the
gotcha.
song that you think doesn't belong. And if you want,
Uh,
I can go first and let you think about it a little bit. So mine is just it's called Prove. It would be the
really?
yeah. For some reason, it just doesn't fit, and there's a lot of songs that are different. Like the song Innocent sounds like it could be from Mother Love Bone, right? But then
Yeah.
you have because I was just like, man, it's not a ripoff. It just sounds like it could be in Seattle in
Hmm.
1990. And then, Last Time, and then like uh Easy. That's like these are all songs that are very interesting and very original. But yeah, I just think that
See,
that's one that I would pick.
I would have gone with either down or easy, and I like easy a lot. It's just it sounds so much like Stone Temple Pilots,
Yes, it does.
like almost to a fault. Like again, not a bad tune, and Jeff's bass playing is fantastic on it. But but it's not like again, if I had to get rid of them, one that might be it, or down, because down is good, and we'll get into this later. But like, it's
Yes.
cool, but it almost sounds like it's two songs mixed into one.
Oh, yes. When you want to get into it,
Yeah.
I will I will say something that could be controversial.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's about all that I have left as far as like the background and what Fuel's up to now. But yeah, it'll be kind of cool to see what they end up doing in the future. Hopefully they continue putting out new music, you know, or whoever their singer is going to be. Hopefully he's good. So yeah, we'll see. But anyways, let's get into it track by track, and we'll eventually go to the bonus tracks as well. But we open with Last Time. I thought it was a really strong opening track. It had this cool little like swell before it kicked in. I could definitely see this being like an opener for like a live set that they might have done. It's really coming out of the gate strong. I think a really solid opener. I like the bridge when it drops out to that bass line and then the drums kick back in.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
it does it is a very good opening. You can do a lot with it. I didn't see them tour this album,
Hmm.
but you could go into that song easily because you can do kind of like a slow build
Yeah.
with sound effects and everything. So whenever you gave me this album to listen to, and I listened to it a couple weeks ago, right off the bat I was like, man, I missed out on a lot. Like I
Yeah.
missed out on this one. This is a good one.
Yeah. No, it's one of those songs where I could see this almost being better to hear it live than in the studio because I could imagine that this kind of song you could really, if you wanted to play it live, you could really add a lot of energy and a lot of different little fills and feels to it. I feel like this one could be a solid live track.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
I agree.
The next one we have is Hemorrhage. I mean, like we said, it's the big single, probably the biggest single that the band's ever had. Like I said, just one of my all-time favorite songs. Just it's very well crafted and produced. From that acoustic intro all the way to the chorus, this song just has hook after hook, and it sounds like they had like a string arrangement on there.
Yes.
The guitar solos I thought weren't overly flashy, but it's just perfectly melodic and catchy, and the bridge is fantastic too. How it builds, and I wanted, but you turned away. It just climbs up and builds like that. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's one, like I said before, the way that the harmonies during all the hook parts, there's extra guitar, and it's not overdriven. It's almost in there because I was listening with my headphones. I'm like, I was focusing on how it's mixed, if there's any panning, or if there's, they didn't really get fancy. It was, you know, kind of like standard rock, but they added a lot with the strings, the backing guitars, the vocals, there's a reason why that song became so popular, and it's because it's basically a perfect song. You really can't record anything better.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot, and not that they were trying to copy this song, but it reminds me a lot of another one of my favorite songs, 18 in Life by Skid Row, where it's like kind of a ballady song, more of a mid-tempo, but just the production of it and the feel, and like you get the feeling like they're really trying to say something in this song, and the melody and just everything is just spot on.
Yep, and like lyrically, it's a great track. So the drumming, there were two drummers for this record, and they're both credited as playing on it, or is it all studio?
No,
musicians?
no. By this time, Kevin Miller was firmly in the band, and he played on, as far as I know, the entire record.
Okay, so this is something that I always say, and anytime you have a very well done rock song, the drums are perfectly played. And even in the parts that may sound simple, when you really get into it, there's a lot of technical things that he's doing with the hi-hats, the way the snare sounds.
Mm-hmm.
You really can't you can miss out on it, and if you really listen to that track, the drums are just tying it in really good. Really good.
Yeah, a lot of good. Apparently, David Campbell was doing the string arrangement. David Campbell's a pretty good composer and conductor. He's actually the father of Beck.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, he's done a lot of work with Michael Jackson, Justin Timberlake, Muse. He actually did Kiss actually did a concert in Melbourne, Australia in 2003 with the Melbourne Symphony, and David Campbell directed it and arranged it. So he's definitely been around for a while. Yeah, what else was I going to say? But yeah, I mean, I always just, Hemmorage always has sort of a special place in my heart, because I remember hearing this when it came out when I was in high school, and just at the time there's so many of like the rap rock bands, the Limp Bizkit and Kid Rock, and nothing against those guys, but I mean at the time I didn't want anything to do with that. I've since come around on it. I've since appreciated it more, but at the time I was just like, man, I just want a real rock band that sings.
We will be doing Limp Bizkit at some point.
Sure. And look, I've appreciated those guys more as time has gone on, but I mean at the time and when they were super popular, I couldn't stand it. But
yeah.
Like when Hemmorage came out, for me it was such a breath of fresh air to hear it. So it always really stuck with me personally, and just was one of those songs where I would be like, yeah, all right, things are going to be okay. It just always kind of gave me that feeling. Okay, so track number 3 is Empty Spaces, and I believe that this song was in that movie A Walk to Remember with Mandy Moore and Shane West.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, Mandy Moore was who I was in love with back then.
No, that's funny. He's getting fancy on the bass in this song.
Yeah.
It was definitely. I was surprised. I was like, okay.
Yeah, a lot of cool little bass licks there, but that opening riff is really, really strong. It's a great tune, very catchy. I don't think they ever put that out as a single, but like it could have been.
Yeah, for me, that's like top 3 for the album, and if I had to put out like like a 3 or 4 song, that's definitely it. That tells you everything you need to know about the band.
Yeah.
And
There's an instrumental breakdown in the middle. It was almost had this like psychedelic feel to it.
oh yeah,
Yeah. Like
musically,
probably didn't hum that
so
right, but
what
you
did
know
you,
you know the part I'm talking
yeah,
about.
so what did you think about, so the fourth track, Scar? Um, if you didn't hear Fuel play it, or if you didn't know the Fuel song, who would you think was the author of that song?
No, with Scar, I really love the riff it opens up on. I think it sounds really good. I don't know who I would compare it to necessarily.
In
I
my head, I was thinking Alice in Chains, and then like the new version of Alice in Chains,
Yeah,
kind of like
yeah,
the Jerry Cantrell post Lane Staley Alice in Chains. That's kind of what it felt like to me.
yeah.
But yeah, super hard driving,
Hmm.
and I like, so to get into a little bit like production maybe slash
Hmm.
writing, they will do a lot of more like halftime or slow time drum and let the band drive musically, like with the instruments. There's a couple songs that do that specifically. This one, it's just like doom, 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 but then they'll kind of go off and kind of like double time the drums a little bit in some ways. I think
Yeah,
it gives it like a real, just, it's very hooky.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, overall, not a bad tune. I don't know if it would have been strong enough to be a single, though. I feel like maybe the chorus could have been a little catchier, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
it's not, I don't think it's single material. It's just a
No.
good deep cut that, I think that it's a good live song as well.
Sure. Yeah, you could put that in a live set, and I think that would still play. Um, then we have Bad Day, the second biggest single from the album. It's a good mid-tempo acoustic song. I think it works both acoustically and with a full band. Um, great melodic solo in the middle, and yeah, just great vocals all around with Brad. I like how he does a little falsetto at the end. Yeah, it really shows off
Yeah.
his voice very well. And like this one and Hemorrhage, I feel like those two had like big those two songs had big like crossover success. I mean, they were a little bit lighter. I feel like they could have been played on like pop radio even back in the day, and it still would have done pretty well, or like regular like top 40, type of stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And it, I think that it could have been, it may have, I probably would have put this at the end of the record, right? So it's a little close to Hemorrhage. So I like, usually the first 4 or 5 songs you'd have, I always think that you put like your best song in like 2 or 3 track. And then a song like this, it even would have been, like you said, just acoustically. I bet it sounds great. In my, it felt a little, it felt very poppy to me. So it
It
wasn't,
was, yeah,
and which is okay.
yeah,
It's not a song that I'm going to listen to as on its own, but it works well in the album.
yeah.
And it's a great ballad. I consider it a ballad, but it's just, and lyrically, I think it's a really good song too.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's whenever I've done like acoustic shows in the past, I've done Bad Day a couple times. It's a catchy song, people know it, and it's fun to play and sing. But yeah, I mean, again, it's not a heavy tune by any means. But then we have Prove, which ended up being your least favorite. I thought it was pretty
Yeah,
catchy. I thought
it
the
it
only
is catchy.
downside to me is that it sounds a lot like Scar Track 4.
Um,
I feel like those two
it kind
songs
of does.
kind of blend together a little bit. In my opinion, I feel like this is the stronger of the two songs.
Really?
Yeah, I do hear a little bit of synth during one of the verses, which I found out it was a guy named Luis
Okay.
Resto. He
That I think that's probably why I picked it, as like doesn't really fit in with the album. They kind of
Yeah,
went off.
yeah, he was just like another session guy they brought to do keyboards on that. I don't know if he was like another producer as well.
Okay.
I don't know if I would have put the keyboards there. I don't mind them, but it's like it's not particularly necessary for the track. But
I agree.
and again, I don't even know if this song would have been catchy enough to be a hit single, but I really like it, and it has the phrase "something like human" in it, which they named the album after. I feel like they should have just named the song "Something Like Human."
That makes sense.
But I really like this song a lot. I feel like the riff during the breakdown slash solo is really great. But what were some of your thoughts on it? Why didn't it click with you? I mean, besides the synth.
Um, so I'd have to, because I've listened to it a few times, and it's not even the fact that it doesn't fit, because later on down the line, there's the song Down. We'll get into that one.
Hmm.
That's almost like another band almost.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that it sounded too much like other songs, and it had too much overdubbing with the synth, and just I don't think I didn't love just the lyrics and the vocals, and I just decided, if I'm gonna take out one song, if they're like, hey, you can only have 11 tracks, so I think this is a 12-track album, that's the one I would cut out. It's just my least favorite, but it's not bad. And honestly, if it came on, I'm not going to turn it off. I just think that as far as the ranking system of this album,
Right.
and when we get to the next track called Easy, that's my favorite track.
Yeah.
I think, other than Hemmorage is the best song in the album, just
By
objectively.
far. Yeah.
But because I every time we listen to it, it's like, what's your favorite song? I was like, well, Easy is just perfect. It's like a perfect song.
Yeah.
It's groovy. Drums are great. It's got a cool little bass line. The harmonies, like I was saying earlier, he does this in a few of the songs, but specifically this track, the guitar is perfectly harmonizing with and very melodic with the vocals, and it's engineered great. It's like, I like kind of hidden gems in an album and deep cuts.
It is cool. Like,
And
Easy is definitely more laid back, definitely bluesier. Like we mentioned earlier, Jeff's bass on it just really shines the most here. I think if I would have done something differently, maybe not have Brett sing through the megaphone for every verse. Maybe like do that for the first verse, and then maybe the second where you just kind of hear his voice.
yeah, that's a choice that,
Again,
it didn't distract from me.
minor nitpick, of course, but I'm saying if
And
that were me, that's what I would have done.
I'm always going to be biased for anything that has cool bass lines in it.
Of course.
So it'll stick out, and that's
Me
probably
too, man.
why.
I'm
It's
a
like,
bass
hey,
player
man.
as well. You know
Yeah,
that.
so
Yeah.
after, I guess, what is your favorite track? Is it Hemorrhage? Do you think that's your favorite overall?
I mean, I think that's probably the best song on there, but I mean, I don't really know yet. I don't. Ask me once we go through all the tracks.
Yes.
Then 'cause I'm not even thinking about it right now. But but yeah. So then we have Down. I like how Down started. It sort of had the like rumbling bass and drums, and the chainsaw, and then that riff that it came out in. Yeah, I feel like the chorus is solid, but again, like we mentioned earlier, the rest of the song after that chorus sounds so different. I feel like
Yeah, this is.
yeah, I mean, I felt like when they got to the chorus, they kind of went for the same feel as they did with some of the other songs, which and I felt like they could have done something like really different for the chorus of this song. Like, if you're gonna go for it, then let's really go all the way. And again, not a bad tune by any means. It kind of sounds like they had two different song ideas they mixed into one. They tried to Frankenstein it together, but again, I'm not talking it. I think it's a good
No.
tune.
So if anyone wants to listen to the song Down,
Hmm.
then listen to a band called Pussifer.
Oh,
And
Maynard, yeah.
and the way, so there's a song, and I can't remember the name of the song, but it's there's a part where Karina Rowland is singing "Don't Forget to Breathe," him and Maynard,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's got this really weird electronic drum beat, and it's not like, it sounds, the vibe of these two songs are very similar, and
Hmm.
it just kind of, when I hear this song, I was like, wow. I would say, I'm pretty sure that the Pussifer song isn't. I don't think they heard this song, and it made them think of a way to write a song, but they kind of meet together. So,
Hmm.
um, when you post, I'll send you a link for that song and people can listen to it. I think
Yeah,
I want
please
to know
do.
if I'm right or wrong in my assessment. I could just be a maniac and not understand things.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to take a listen to that. But yeah, then we go to track 9, which is Solace. I really like the back and forth vocals on this one in the verses. The chorus isn't quite as strong as I think it could be. I feel like there's sort of like a build up after the initial verses, but but that's it. It doesn't really get to like a crescendo, I guess. It's hard to
Yeah.
describe and really articulate, but yeah, solid verses. The chorus isn't bad either, but it just I felt like there could be a little bit more of a hook. There could be a couple more hooks in this song.
Yeah, they very interesting vocal choices that were made, and
Yeah,
they're great. I like them, and the tempo. If they didn't decide to do the vocals and guitar and drum tempos the way they did, it would be a super boring song. And I don't know if they did it on purpose, but the way it worked out is very interesting.
yeah. But I mean, yeah, it has a little bit of energy to it. Like I said, the back and forth, like kind of call and response vocals. I'm a big fan of that sort of thing where you get more than one guy singing on it. I don't know if that was Brett recording both parts or if that was
I
Carl
could,
doing the
yeah,
vocal.
I couldn't tell, um, but they were good harmonies,
Hmm.
definitely.
So then we have Knives. This is a song I really like a lot, and this and Down are the ones that Brett had a co-write on. But yeah,
Really?
really, I thought this was a really catchy song all the way through. Like really solid like pop rock tune. I thought the verses and the choruses were really strong, as is the main riff. I just lots of hooks here. It felt like this could have been a single, honestly.
I agree. If this is hashtag hook, it's very memorable. It's not the same. The way they made this song and the way Hemorrhage is made are very. I think they kind of because some songs feel different. These songs are very like if this is 1967, they could put that on the B side and it would make total sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the vocal effects right before the guitar solo, and the solo itself has sort of that nasty, like sleazy vibe to it. It has a little bit of attitude to it, and I like that. And that outro after the chorus is great. Walk away from you. You know how it ends like that?
Yes,
Yeah,
I love it, man.
very good
So
stuff.
the next track is called Innocent. This
Hmm.
is the one that I was vibing like, okay, this is a Mother Love Bone song,
Yeah.
and it is like it brought me back to old school. It's like flannels, and
Hmm.
it
Yeah, I felt like this could have even been a third or fourth single. I wouldn't have led with it, but yeah, this I feel like this should have been the closing track on the album.
it yeah. I didn't even write notes for the closing track because I know that I said the other song that Prove was my least favorite.
Hmm.
Slow was very much
Oh wow.
lackluster.
Okay, you didn't really dig that one. Okay, okay.
I
Well,
didn't, and that's just my person. I think that's just my personal preference. Um, Innocent is an upper echelon song to me. The way it's,
sure.
and maybe it's just stylistically, I really dig the
It
style.
has a very epic feel to it. Like it really builds. It really builds to like a big, uh, it definitely builds to like a big crescendo. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but like this song, I could definitely picture it being in their live set. Like it has that epic, big feel
I
to it.
yes,
And then we have Slow, which I mean I liked Slow. I thought it was really cool, especially for like an acoustic tune. I don't know if I would have put this in the regular live set. This would have been great if they were doing like an unplugged like acoustic thing. I felt like this song goes really well to it. I thought it was cool, sort of upbeat, laid back, a little bit soulful as well. And even the drums on it had a cool little hi hat groove in the verses.
it fits definitely in the record, and I don't know why because I've only listened to this album 3 times, so you know obviously Hemorrhage I've probably heard 1,000 times, so I
Hmm.
know that song front and back. It I guess so sometimes this happens in a record where
Hmm.
it starts out like this one, the first 5 or 6 songs is like this is the best thing you've ever heard. You can't really get any better. And then it feels like it kind of tails off. And, that happens a lot of times.
Yeah.
And this one didn't really, because I would take like a lot of really, I think, great historic rock bands, they'll sneak in a sick song at the last track, and you're like, oh man, and they want you, it makes you want more. And just the sound, I'm like the worst, but after I was over with that, I was like, okay, cool. But I'm like, I don't need to listen to it all the time. That was my opinion on that song, but it's just not very memorable. It's not memorable like some of the other songs are, to me personally.
Yeah, no, it's fair. That's fair. And I know when they did a reissue later on, they had they had like an acoustic version of Hemmorage, which makes sense.
Yes.
They had 2 cover songs. Both of them were just like acoustic, just guitar and voice. And it was Daniel, the Elton John song.
Yeah.
And
so the first time I heard, when I listened to it originally, I listened to the full, like the updated version.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this song is really cool. And then when the chorus came in, I was like, oh my gosh. So I've already heard this song before.
Yeah.
It's a really good rendition of Daniel, and I like it better than the original version.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's pretty strong.
They're both great. It's a great cover.
Yeah. And then they have Going to California, the Led Zeppelin tune, which that's a great song. I wish they would have added some more, like, they would have made it a little bit more like the original, added some like mandolins and stuff in the background, and I thought it was pretty good. I felt like Brett probably could have had, I felt like he sang well enough on it. It's just, I felt like he kind of tried to growl it a little bit more than he needed to, and if he just kind of sang it more, just like smoother and like sort of a cleaner voice, it probably would have sounded better. But I don't think he did a bad job with it necessarily.
Yeah, so those are 2 interesting cover choices, because what they did with Daniel, I like it so much because they made it theirs. Mm-hmm. Because you're not gonna do Elton John. It's just he has his own perfect, like his style is just perfectly Elton John, and it's piano driven, and so, but they did great with the acoustic guitar. Going to California, like Led Zeppelin, it's pretty hard to replicate that in a way that is, Stone Temple Pilots do. Dancing Days, their version is in a lot of ways cooler than the original Led Zeppelin, and a lot of other covers of Led Zeppelin are lackluster. Mm-hmm. This was a good cover, but I don't think they could reproduce the mandolin, and it's a tough task to do a Robert Plant.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask. But I thought he really brought some intensity to it, especially that verse part. It seems like the guy's got a punch on the note. Yeah,
it's great. I thought it was really cool. It would have, man. A lot of these remasters, they put in some stuff that's like, man, you should have put that in the original album. It would have, but there's probably business involved and they couldn't for whatever reason.
Yeah. I mean, who knows?
Or they make stupid decisions.
Yeah, I'd seen that there were a couple other songs that didn't. I guess they recorded during the sessions that I haven't heard yet. I'm looking on there's Sister Mary Innocent, and then Bruises. I guess maybe they might be on YouTube somewhere. I'll have to go check them out. But I guess Sister Mary Innocent ended up appearing on one of Tommy Lee's solo albums, because Tommy Lee did an album where he had a bunch of different guest vocalists. Okay. And I don't know if they re-recorded something with if maybe Tommy re-recorded it or remastered it, but I guess they decided to use that song on Tommy's record and brought in Brett and Carl to do that. And I guess maybe that's where that relationship kind of started, because Tommy ended up playing drums on Angels and Devils on half of the songs. So it was Tommy and Josh Freese or somebody.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which wouldn't surprise me. Josh Freese, that guy's played on a million records.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, he's sort of like the studio drummer du jour, but that's because he's awesome.
Yes.
So, So yeah, man, that's it for Something Like Human. I feel like again, it's a consistently listenable record. I feel like if you haven't listened to it, I would recommend that you do if you're a fan of this type of music. Yeah, this is an album I've always dug, and I'm glad to kind of revisit it a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm very happy that I was exposed to it for a second time because I think it's great and it stands the test of time. It's a very good record. It's I would as far as a ranking goes, I would definitely listen to it. It's probably for me Sunburn was more my favorite Fuel, but I think it's really good. It has deep cuts that are great. So so I think that we should also let everyone know the next album we do, possibly, so that maybe they can listen to it and
yeah. Well, what were you thinking for the next album? I think we were talking about maybe Tool or something else. Or
I think that no, I was thinking of the Fear Factory release, Obsolete.
Okay. So I know our band has a song called Obsolete. Fear Factory is a band that I've heard of, but I don't really know a lot of their stuff. So that's going to be really exciting for me. I'm really not familiar with the Fear Factory stuff.
Yeah, so
like I know they had a big hit with their cover of Cars by Gary Newman, but that's about all I know about those guys.
So the Cars cover is on the Obsolete. There are two versions of Obsolete. There's the remaster. There's the original version. I could be wrong. I think the Cars cover was on the remaster. Possibly, I could be wrong, but they had. You should be familiar with some of the songs. I think they were in some video games in the late 90s and even some movies. But it's more of a industrial heavy metal 7-string guitar sound.
Nice.
And it's a concept album, which is something that Fear Factory is kind of known for in their discography is having these concepts. So, whenever we get a chance to do that one, I'm pretty excited about that.
Right on, yeah. And that'll be cool for me to kind of dig into this band that I've always heard about, but I just, for whatever reason, they were never on my radar, and I just didn't get to listen to any other stuff. But yeah, here we go. Here's sort of my intro to Fear Factory. So that'll be fun. So, and that's it, man. Thank you guys for tuning in, and hopefully you enjoyed this review. Hopefully you dig this album like we did. Yeah, make sure you leave some comments if you have any suggestions about particular records you want us to do. It could be anything. There's definitely no limits as far as anything's on the table at this point. And make sure you check out our band Vertebreaker at facebook.com/vertebreakerband, on Twitter at vertebreakerfl, on Instagram at vertebreaker. You can always email us, for any booking. You could email vertebreaker@yahoo.com. We'll leave all the contact information in the description as well. You could follow me on Twitter and Instagram at jackxconnor. Like me on Facebook, facebook.com/jackconnormusic. And you can always go back and listen to the other episodes of the podcast. I know I did a one-on-one interview with Rob here. And Rob, where can the folks find you online?
They can find me on Facebook. My Instagram is rob.bassecrest. I'm not really on Instagram that much. And that's about it. Yeah, you can see me in all the Vertebreaker stuff. Yeah, that's about it.
Cool, man. Yeah.
I think for the next show, I will remember the actual Instagram handle so that people can find me if they'd like to.
There you go. I mean, as we record this, it's January 29th, 2021, just a day after Rob's birthday, by the way. Happy birthday.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, look, pandemic is still going on as we're recording this. I don't know when we're going to play next or where. I pray to God we will again soon. It's so depressing, but hopefully podcasts like this are helping you guys get through it. If you're listening, it's certainly helping us to get through by doing them. It kind of keeping me sane at least. So, and Rob, I appreciate you doing this with me, and hopefully this will be the first of many more to come. I look forward to doing some more album reviews with you.
Yes, sir, I will. I'm very excited about Obsolete. I'll see you guys next time.
Cool, man. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.